A lot of the questions at the end, the 3-4 markers. Why do people struggle with that? Because they... I had a student from this year's cohort. He's coming first. He was telling me how he was doing a 3D vector question, and he couldn't pick up the way that the question wanted him to approach the question, and he was panicking. But then he remembered, why can't I... And then last but not least, I just want to go back and reiterate on the importance of being able to problem solve and being able to be imaginative.
Okay.
Right? And don't limit your possibilities, your capabilities. A lot of the times, like, your friends and the people around you say you can't do it. It's because they've held themselves, they've caged their potential so that they can't progress. They can't see that potential. They don't dare to imagine what is possible, right? A very good example of someone that didn't have that mindset was the founder of Airbnb, Brian Chesky.
Okay.
Brian Chesky, yeah. So I remember, like, at the very beginning when he started Airbnb, he was just him going to like some sort of convention in another state in the US, and he was crashing on his friend's inflatable bed.
Okay.
That's why it's called Airbnb. It's called Air Bed and Breakfast. That's what it stands for.
Okay.
So air bed is an inflatable mattress.
Yeah.
And then you just have breakfast the next day with them, and then you leave.
Okay.
Yeah. That's why it's called Airbnb, right?
Yeah.
So initially they're like, why would you let a stranger into your house? How is that even possible? How can people trust that you're not like a psychopath and you're just going to kill people? And all these parameters, and people say, nah, you can't do it. This is a stupid idea, blah, 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 blah.
Yeah.
And look at him now, right? Probably one of the top 100 companies in the world. It's because he didn't limit his imagination, right? And so if your friend that's not coming first is only doing 1 page of homework a day, 1 booklet a week, for example, why would you do the same thing?
Yeah.
Right? Yeah, you have to reach that minimum requirement. If you haven't even done a booklet, yeah, you have to get that booklet. But then thinking that, 1 booklet a week is enough, well, do they have the evidence to back that up? Because if they don't, then clearly that formula doesn't work. You have to find the formula that you can achieve your goal. But you might need to get creative. You might need to use a bit of your imagination. A lot of the times, if you actually think about maths that you've done,
Okay.
since probably like year 8, year 9, until HSC, especially HSC, the math exam is broken down into conceptual understanding and problem solving. A lot of the questions at the end, the 3-4 markers, they allow you to create the approach to get the answer. Why do people struggle with that? Because they lack that creativity. Their brain is not used to being the one that's making the decision. They've always been following what other people are doing or what the teacher's saying, or right?
Yeah.
They're not flexible enough. They have all the tools. And if you know how to use all the tools, should you not be able to build this absurd house that no one has built before? But instead, you're just building the same old house that everyone else is building. And when there's a problem that can't be solved with the traditional house, no one can do it. You need that innovator. You need that person that steps outside of the box, right? That can problem solve. I had a student from this year's cohort. He's coming first right now by a landslide in 4-unit.
Okay.
He was telling me how he was doing 4-unit 3D trig question, a 3D vector question. And he couldn't pick up the way that the question wanted him to do the approach the question. And he was panicking. But then he remembered, why can't I use complex numbers and use some theory ideas from that to be able to create a method that I've never done before, but I know in theory it works because I'm confident and I know I'm knowledgeable about this. Came up with his own way, and he ended up getting the question right and got the marks. You know what I'm saying? And that was completely different to what the question wanted. And that's possible. But the issue is, you have to work on that. You have to be used to being creative.
Yeah.
You have to be used to going outside the box and channeling your inner imagination to be able to solve some of these problems. Otherwise, you're just scared, you know? You don't want to execute. You don't want to do the question.
Yeah.
And the problem solving is such an important part of your development. Because a lot of students, they study so hard, they study so much, right? But they can't go that extra mile, they can't get first. And the reason is because they're missing that imagination.
How do you work on that?
Confidence in your ability.
Okay.
confidence in your ability. You have to get to a point. You can't, obviously, if you're starting from zero today, you can't build on imagination if you don't have the tools, right? I can't build an upside down pyramid building if I don't know how to use a hammer, if I don't know how to use a saw, if I don't know how to use a screwdriver, isn't it? So therefore, I have to hone in my skills first. I do need to know the fundamentals. I need to know my algebra skills. I need to know how to apply algebra skills in calculus, in polynomials, all these topics.
Yeah.
And then once I develop these skills, in other words, my tools are there. I know how to use every single tool to build a house, to build a monument. That's when you can start tapping into your creativity, right? And tapping into your creativity is really kind of understanding or dissecting or analyzing the problem. What is the problem I'm trying to solve? And which tool is appropriate in this situation? A majority of people that they do study hard, but they can't overcome that creativity aspect, that problem-solving aspect, is because they are following a preset guideline. I've done questions in the past where I had to do this first, this first, this first. And then they try to implement those same strategies and ideas into this new problem and they can't.
Yeah.
Right? Because they're not flexible enough to be able to use all of their knowledge at their disposal. That could be because they're not brave enough, they're not confident enough. But that could also be because they didn't really study it correctly.
Right.
Right? A lot of kids, they just take the easy way out and just memorize everything.
Yeah, yeah.
If you just memorize everything, and you memorize this question, you memorize this formula, and you memorize how to do that, there's going to be a point where you can't problem solve.
You can only go so far.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because you don't understand that scenario and this scenario is the same.
Yeah.
In this scenario, you use this method, not because I told you to use it, because that is the right method to use. And therefore, when you see a scenario that's similar to that, you're like, oh, wait a minute. I've seen this kind of scenario before. And if my memory serves me correctly, these are the tools that I need to solve this problem, right? But they just memorize or they just follow, you know what I mean? What the teachers say. They're just copy and pasting. How are you going to be able to problem solve then?
I remember my English tutor,
Yeah.
close to HSC, we were doing like reading paper practice. And then we were struggling with it. And she pulls up something called, I think it's called the Bloom's taxonomy.
Okay.
Have you heard of that?
No, I have not.
I'll show you this.
Okay.
Because this is exactly what you're talking about.
Yeah.
I think for people watching on YouTube,
Yeah.
put on the screen.
Yeah.
There's actually a name for exactly what you described.
So you start
gotta
from the
start from
foundation.
bottom,
Okay.
yeah.
So they want you to remember first, then understand, apply, analyze, evaluate, and then you can create with. Right.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So this is like exactly what you're talking about.
Yeah. But you know what the thing is, right? You know why they have to come up with a name for it? Because if you don't come up with a name for it, they don't think it's a thing. Do you get what I'm trying to say, right?
Yeah.
That's like everything there's a name.
So it's like valid.
Yeah, so it's valid. That's right. So this is the only way, you know? Like if you don't really understand why you have those tools, right?
Yeah.
You won't be able to use it. The analogy I like to give my students all the time is, imagine like I'm teaching you how to use the hammer, but you're just following the motion. Oh, hammer is used like this. Saw is used like this, right? And then I say, okay, build a house.
Like what the hell?
Yeah, because they know how to do the motion. They know how to use the equation, but they're using it in the wrong instances. That's just ineffective learning because what they're doing is instead of asking, well, why do I have to know it? What problem is this skill solving? Why do we need to hammer? Why do we need to saw?
Yeah.
Because if you know the reasons why, then when they show you the application, you're like, oh, I see how effective it is to saw with a saw and not to saw with a hammer. And then you get placed in a scenario in which you now have to create this and no one's telling you the steps. It's not step one, use the hammer. Step two, use the saw. Why can't I use the saw first? Why can't I use the hammer first? Maybe the way that the actual master is teaching the apprentice is actually an ineffective way. And you tap into your imagination and your creativity. You're like, I can actually improve this scenario, improve the efficiency, reduce the amount of steps. If I actually combine these two together or do that first instead of this, that's when you kind of improve on the scenario. But before you even do that, you need to understand what you're looking at, what you're doing.
Yeah.
Just to kind of summarize what we're talking about today, not only do you have to set yourself in the environment so you don't fail, but you also have to have that correct mindset. And within the mindset, you have to most importantly come up with a narrative, something fiction that hasn't become a reality yet, and you have to build your way to get to that reality. You have to work hard. You have to set yourself a time limit, something that's not unachievable, but something that is not easy to achieve as well. So not only do you have to set yourself enough time, but you also have to set yourself that kind of correct, smaller milestones, smaller pit stops, checklists that you have to tick off, right? Before you're able to progress in a healthy, stable, consistent direction towards your ultimate goal.
Yeah.
Once you've set that goal, you will also have purpose. I think that's really important. Because now you're not just going to wake up mindless, not knowing what to do. There's so many kids that are like that. They just wake up and they're like, oh, what am I going to do today? I'm just going to play games. I'm just going to fool around with my friends, or I'm just going to do this or do that. There's no purpose. There's no direction. Once you've set that goal, you have a direction. Every day you wake up, you're like, I have something to do. I have to achieve this. So you're not going to waste your time. Yeah, you're not going to waste your time. If you get tired, if you exhaust yourself, that's fine. Then you can rest. Sometimes you can't push yourself past your limits, right? Because you don't have the tolerance to.
Yeah.
Right? You can't, it's not realistic to say, oh, I'm going to work 20 hours today if you've never worked even 1 hour in your life. So if you haven't even worked 1 hour, maybe the first 30 minutes might be productivity, and the next 9 hours, 19 hours and 30 minutes, you know what I mean? It's just going to be you sitting there procrastinating, not doing anything, right? So if you reach your limits, then yeah, come back tomorrow, rest, you know what I mean? Actually do something that's different, and then you come back and you do it tomorrow. Eventually it's going to be to a point that you can hit 20 hours and you don't feel it's a chore. You don't feel it's a thing.
Yeah.
We'll kind of get into more of the strategies in the later episodes.
Like actually applicable strategies that.
Exactly. But for now, let's make sure everyone sets themselves a goal, and also kind of break that goal down into actionable mini goals that they can achieve and they have to achieve on a daily, weekly, monthly basis, so that they can build confidence over time, that as more time goes by, the more confident and the more clearer the picture is that they can do it.
Yeah.
Yeah, but the small wins, they're so crucial.